So we've got the recording going. And I'm going to turn this off now to my lovely and wonderful Julia Yarbo. Julia is a former broadcast journalist. She spent well over a decade taking care of her mom, so she really knows the caregiving situation inside and out. And we are incredibly fortunate that she is also an AARP volunteer. So Julia, take it away, and then I'll pop up the slides when we're ready to go forward.
All right. Thank you so much, Christina. I appreciate it. And thank you all for being here. It looks like we have a really good group. And just so you know, I really want today's session to be a conversation, very informational. We want you to feel comfortable. Take your notes, put questions into the chat. This is really to make sure that we share a lot of knowledge. So, as Christina said, I'm Julia Yarbo. I'm a AARP Washington State volunteer, a former family caregiver, former broadcast journalist, and former family caregiver to my elderly, now deceased mother. And so I went through that process. I had to learn about long-term care by trial and error. I am absolutely thrilled that our guest today for this session is a former colleague from broadcast news, a friend, an expert in the field of journalism, also a family caregiver, also an educator for the community, and she is a financial expert in terms of helping people plan out their estates, their legacies, which really long-term care falls within that. So I am thrilled to introduce to you Vicki Fraser Williams. She is joining us from Florida this morning and this afternoon for you. So Vicki, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and life experiences with us this morning.
Absolutely. First of all, glad to be here. And thank you, Julia, my old friend and colleague. And thank you, AARP Washington, for really actually allowing me to share on this topic that is so near and dear to my heart, particularly as I start to talk to other folk, right, who I believe too often don't start thinking about this early enough and too often too late. I had the great privilege, I should say, of helping Julia, like she said, learn kind of the hard way. The good thing about it is she asked a lot. A lot of hard questions. And we want to try to be able to equip you all to do the same thing. So the reason this is important to me and why I would give time, and always will, is that we should all consider the fact that 70% of us, 65 years or older plus, will need some form of extended care in our lifetimes. And the reason is obvious if we think about it. We're all living longer these days. And frankly, an extended health concern or the expense of a long-term care need is one of the biggest risks to my retirement years, particularly our bank accounts. So I'm gonna, the thing y'all have to check me because I can keep talking, but Julie, let's make sure I get the questions that you want answered first.
Yeah, no, and that's perfect. Again, I'm so appreciative because once individuals have lived the caregiving journey and you also have experienced long-term care insurance in terms of for yourself and then helping others, there are so many nuances. And really, that's what we want to dive into today. So let's start from just that really broad, high level. LTC, we hear it first time I heard it, I had no idea what that meant. So really, in a simplistic terms, what is long-term care insurance, Vicki?
So let's start with what is long-term care, which is really a range of services, both medical and non-medical, that's really intended to help support people to have a better quality of life in the event of a long-term or extended care need. Right. So long-term care insurance allows you to have a policy that eliminates your need to pay out of pocket at the time of need, at the time you go on claim. Uh, the cost of long-term insurance is huge. And again, a lot of times we don't think about, let me say it this way. If you have children, a lot of times the thought is, if I need long-term care, I have a daughter, I have a son, I have children, and they're going to take care of me. And that's exactly what we want, expect. But I want you to think about what happens if, in fact, you need to have a child take care of you. And to a large extent, they have to leave a lot of their life as they know it to do that. So long-term care insurance allows you to have something in place to take care of those benefits instead of you coming out of pocket when you're on claim.
And that makes perfect sense. And as just so everybody here on the call, I wanted to make our slides today very simplistic so we could have an outline and touch on as much as possible. That question, people say, well, I don't need that. You just laid out a really good scenario. So, who should have coverage? Quick story. I first learned about long-term care insurance coverage because I had an HR director years ago who knew that I was the primary point person for my mother. And she said, you may want to think about this. And at the time, my company offered it through our employer. And she walked me through it. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's right. I am probably going to be the one handling the affairs for my mother. At that point, I was much younger and I thought, I don't need the coverage,
Right.
but I did need. So who should be thinking about long-term care coverage?
In a word, all of us, all of us. I get that question often, particularly with young people. You think, well, they think, I'm going to live a long time, I'm going to live forever. I don't have to worry about that now. It's also what happens when we talk to them about retirement, right? If they're blessed, they'll get to that. So let's talk about coverage. As with any kind of insurance, the younger you are, the healthier you are, therefore, the less expensive it is, right? So even young people should get a policy, get some coverage on themselves. As we get older, the cost goes up. And to be perfectly honest with you, the more difficult it is to get approved, right? Because here in Florida, in particular, once you pass over 60, a lot of the approval has to do with your cognitive ability, not even your health in particular, right? So you want to be able to do that while you're sharp, while we can still pass those tests. I remember going through that myself, and it was before 60, just before 60. But that's what happens is now it's cognitive in addition to your health. You can, for instance, folk who are already, say, in a nursing home are unable to get this coverage, right? So the idea is to make sure you're strategizing and thinking about this long before you need it.
And I think that's key. Strategizing based on your conditions, your family situation, and your age. And so we pretty much touched on the whys and the when of thinking about it.
Yes.
But to that point, is there an absolute age cutoff? I know you said after 60 in Florida, it can be more expensive, but is there an absolute age cutoff where you can no longer purchase a policy?
Right up at, and it depends on the company, right? That right up at 80, 85, you're looking at an inability to get any coverage, right? Now, that if you're really wonderfully healthy, and many of us, at 80 really are still good. But yeah, that 80 to 85 period would be when you'd have difficulty getting coverage.
Okay. So for everybody on the call, look at your own situation and think about, okay, well, where do I fit within this big picture? So the next nuance is, how does it all work? A lot of different moving parts, as you mentioned, Vicky, different companies. You're with one company, different representatives, different companies. They all offer different types of policies underneath the umbrella of long-term care insurance. So one of the questions that I had to learn the hard way was, what types of care and services are actually covered under those policies? Wide range, correct?
Yes, very, very wide range. And again, it depends upon your concerns and what you want to make sure is covered. Okay, so on your third bullet, I'm just going to drop down a little bit. So a skilled nursing facility, right, is one in which you have to have skilled nursing professionals to take care of you. So that's a nursing home, right? Assisted living facility might be a place where you can, live and you can live on your own. You kind of take care of yourself, but you have the ability to have someone helping you in the event you need help with specific things. Now, so the types of care and services covered can range from a full benefit in a nursing home to home care. Um, Home care would involve everything from care coordination between your doctors, what you need, et cetera. It could involve transportation, handling your medication, helping you do, and I'm going to talk about this if we have time, those daily living activities. By the way, there are 6 daily living activities that if you are unable to do 3 of those things, you become eligible for long-term care. And those things are, if I hopefully I'm not jumping too far ahead, Julia, but it's those things that you would automatically think that you do in the morning. Think about getting up in the morning. Can you transfer from the bed to the bathroom? Can you, once you get into the bathroom, toileting is the second one. Are you able to get on and off the toilet? Bathing. Are you able to do the basic grooming for yourself? Dressing, selecting and putting on clothes, eating, your ability to feed yourself. And last is continence, your ability to control your bladder and your bowel movements. Any of 3 of those things, your inability to do 3 of those things would technically put you in a long-term care position. And those kinds of services can be provided for you through a long-term care policy, insurance policy.
And I love that you spelled those out because again, what my experience within the care field is that we use a lot of acronyms. And we hear ADL, but what does that mean, right? Assisted daily living. And so that breakdown of understanding that if there are 3 that you cannot do, you then qualify. So it's important to not only to know those sub portions. And the reason I wanted to touch on the difference between the types of care covered between skilled nursing facility and assisted living facility is that as clients, we may look at what our physical needs are. Those physical needs may not match up to what the license is for the facility that you are in.
Absolutely.
And so it's key as you are thinking about your policies, and Vicki, I'll ask you this and we can dive into that, to understand the differences, that it's to know those care services that are and are not covered. Again, I'll go back to my own personal experience. I did have a policy for my mother, and full disclosure, I didn't really know what I was purchasing, folks, but I knew I needed something, and it was better than nothing. Excuse me. But what I didn't understand was the difference between skilled nursing facility and assisted living facility. So while my mother's needs really fell more within skilled nursing, she was in an assisted living.
Okay.
So the benefit payment that was returned on the policy was only a small portion because it was assisted living. So despite the fact that her care needs were much higher, right? So it's really important to understand when you're talking with an agent and reading through, what is and isn't covered, and those distinctions can make all the difference when you're looking at your own situation and saying, well, what is it that I may need?
And you want as much flexibility within that policy as you can get. For instance, you can have a policy that allows you to use 100% of your benefit either in a nursing home or at home. Now, obviously, at home, it might be a lot less expensive. You can hire an aide to come in to help you do those 3 to 6 things that you have difficulty. You still are able to be home, right? And you have someone, and typically that's an hourly kind of cost. We spoke about your mom for a second. My situation was that my mom, also she had a stroke, and on one side of her body, she just simply could not move. She couldn't do anything. We used to call my mom the Energizer Bunny because she was always up early and she was always moving and stuff. Well, that stroke rendered her unable to do those things. And she was blessed in having 4 daughters. And all 4 of us, one of them moved here to Florida, and I was not far. One was really closer than that. Somebody moved in with her. She had that coverage. But my mom also had 2 long-term care policies, ironically, that she never told us about. And they were simple $50 a day policies. Well, get this, that gave her $100 a day to use on services. And what we did was, because mom was someone who got up early, we said we're going to take half of that and bring somebody in for a couple of hours in the morning early. So when mom is up, she can be fed, she can be bathed, she can, all of those things, maybe before we even get out of bed, right? And we'll use the rest of it, the second policy, for someone to come at night. They didn't have I remember one day walking in the back room where we'd set up a whole room and place for my mom, and my mom was in a bed sleep, and her aide was right next to her in a chair, knocked out. She didn't have anything to do per se, but she was there for her. And those little policies took care of it. So it's really important, as Julia said, to know what it is you need. That aide would not have been able to dispense medication to my mom, well, like a needle or something like that. She did do medication, but anything that requires a licensed, skilled nurse, that cannot be taken care of in your home under the home care. You need to be in a nursing home.
So would it be fair to say that individuals can think about this overall insurance as um, that we can use it as a full umbrella, or we can use it as piecemeal to fill in the gaps where perhaps we don't have family or friends, or those moments when we just need that extra bit of care?
You said it. It can be one or the other. It can be the overall full-fledged umbrella under which everything that you need is taken care of through that policy. Or you can use it as you need it, right? I need somebody to come in 3 hours a day to take care of this or that. And some of it could be house cleaning. Some of it could just be feeding or companionship, believe it or not. So what has happened, Julia, over the time of long-term care? There was a time when you could actually get unlimited benefits that would last forever in a long-term care policy. Most of those companies are out of business today because of the fact that we're living longer, right? So we need to, many of them are out of business. And now it is more about tailoring what it is you need individually. And an agent, who is a person that's working with you, can help you determine those things before you choose a plethora of products that are actually out there for this.
And the concept of that, I do want to drill into this a little bit more in terms of how it has changed, right? Many insurance products have changed based on the demographics of our country, what our needs are, how family units have changed. And the concept that many people may think, well, this is completely out of my cost range. I can't afford any kind of coverage. And in talking with you at length and asking all the questions that I asked in this process, one of the ways that long-term care insurance has changed is that that level of personalizing it based on your family needs and your budget. Can we talk a little bit about the person who says, well, I just can't afford this? What about those folks? Can they, in fact, maybe think about affording it?
You know something, Julia? I think a lot of times, just on insurance in general, sometimes we eliminate before we fully know, right? I can't afford this or that. Um, Things have changed so much in this industry now that the idea is to find what works for your specific situation, including your pocketbook, right? I just talked about two policies mom had. They were $50 a day policies. They probably cost less than $50 a month to do. Um, so there are, and I'll just tell you this very quickly. A lot of what happens is you determine once you're really working with someone, we determine how much of a benefit you think you want to have to be able to use either at home or in a nursing home. And based upon that amount, let's just say you want to have $300 a day to be able to take care of that need. You basically multiply that times 12. That would give you the cost of that policy for a year. And then you determine if you want a policy that goes for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. The typical time of being in a nursing home is 3 years. And of course, there are some outliers who have been there a much longer period of time. But you take that amount, multiply it time the years that you want, and that will give you a bucket of money that is considered your lifetime maximum for that policy. Good example. Let's say $200 a day, you multiply that times 365, that gives you $73,000 in that policy for a year. But then if you wanted to cover 2 years, then now we're up at 146,000. That money is not touched until and unless you go on claim. There are other policies out there. That's why we say it's different for different people, in which you determine right up front, I want to pay for this in 5 years, 6 years, 2 years. I want to pay for it and be done. You can do that, and that policy, that amount of money sits there waiting for you, because typically when it's used and needed is right up at that 80-year range, 80-year-old range, right? So it sits there. In many cases now, these policies also have dividends tied to them. So it's making money for you while it's waiting for you should you need that, and could in fact even have a life insurance part that's added onto that. In that, if you never used that policy, there would still be a life insurance type policy benefit for your beneficiaries. So it is different for every family. All of what you said there, one size does not fit all. And you got to look at your pocketbook in terms of what it is you not only can afford, but what it is you think would would cost to do it. And we have something, and I can share this with you later, that state by state will tell you just what the cost for skilled nursing, assisted living, or home care aid would be per state. I'll share that with you.
Right.
Get it out.
And that information is so valuable. And I'm actually going to, I saw one of the comments pop in that I think it was Patrick said, well, what if you don't have other family who's caring for you and it's all just you? And so I'm going to loop around, and that's how I had to come at it, right? I don't have children. I won't have me the way my mom had me. So I have to look forward and say, all right, I went through this. I know how much it costs every single day for me to have hired those in-home care agents. I know how much it costs per day to be at the care facility, right? I still have all of those documents from caring for my mom. And I know those costs are even higher now. So I'm looking at that saying, well, what if something happens to me and there is absolutely no one to help me? I would need full coverage, perhaps in my home or at a facility. So I had to work backwards and say, what is that amount that I think I will need? Divide that out of how many years I wanted to pay for it, and then honestly say, well, can I afford that? I could have said, no, I can't afford it, but I thought, I lived this. I know what that looks like. I know what it means. And I didn't want to take that chance. So again, it is different for every single person. But if you don't have other family members or children, I highly encourage you to research, talk to the experts, ask those questions. And I'm losing track of my thought process of what I wanted to say on that. That
And do it
you
while you
touched on the
can.
the life or the death benefits. That was a big question for me. That if I'm paying all of this money and I'm building out this policy, but then what if I never use it? What happens then? And I know that comes into play when we talk about, considering the affordability against your needs.
Yes,
But that's
yes.
one of the ways that policies have changed over the years.
Absolutely. It can be tailor-made to you. And Julia, I think you did all the right things and asked all the right questions, right? It's ironic that after my mom passed, I remember my husband saying, "Well, Vicky, we don't have any children. We certainly don't have four daughters." And believe it or not, that is when we got serious about getting a policy because who's going to take care of us kind of thing, right? um, so you talked about when we think about long-term care insurance policies, one of the things that come up is what if I never use it? What if I paid this money and I never use it? There are different ones out there, right? And one I just told you about, in which if you never use it, there's a benefit that's left for your beneficiary, whoever that may be. There is another type in which you can. Well, let me say it this way: everything that you add on, you can imagine it costs more, but you can do what we call a legacy policy, which builds into your monthly payment your ability to have that beneficiary. Now, they cannot take on the care, the benefit itself, but they can get the money that you've paid into it. So again, it does. It's hard to project out. Julia, you've gone through it, so you know for sure. You're the best kind of, I'd say, client and person because you've been through it. The hard thing is for those folks who haven't been through it, but also can't imagine, right? You just can't imagine that ever happening. And yet it does, and it happens every day. I like to tell folk, have a strategy. Have a strategy today. Why? Because we do not know what's happening tomorrow. We have no idea. I will share one story with you on this. I have a client right now who is in full-blown dementia, and her sister, who is actually older than she is, has come to me to help her get her affairs in order, just finding out where things are. But think about that. She can't help us. She cannot help us at all. And so we're going through all kinds of things to figure out where things are, right? And it turns out she has a lot that she did up front. One of those things, though, was not long-term care insurance. And today she needs that.
And you bring up a really good point, and I actually just wrote an article about this recently because I went through a family situation where an individual had not put items in place. Um, Again, so important to think ahead. And I'm going to say, if you're on this call, you are thinking about it and you're trying to figure out what you should do next. So I love that we have the large group that we have today. That one size fits all, I want to reiterate that because as much as we're touching on a lot today, but I'm going to venture to say you're not going to hop off of this call and know exactly what you need to go purchase and what you need to do, right?
Right.
This is the primer of, wow, there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of fine print and specifics between state, between
Yes.
families, between your own budget, what your
Yes.
health needs are, right? And so these are the types of items that you have to start sifting through to decide, does this work for you? I also want to pop into that based on where you live. Think about the services and needs of your community. If you live in a rural area, which I
Mhm.
have for many years when I was in California and now here in Washington as well, the type of coverage that I may think about getting could be very different than somebody who lives in the city in an urban area.
Very true.
Because I may realize that there isn't a facility near me. My coverage at whatever point that may likely be somebody who would be in my home. How does that cost change? Again, one size does not fit all. So you really need to think about your individual situation and work backwards from there. Um, I feel like we've really dumped a lot into your buckets this morning in terms of uh, information. Um, and I mentioned the fine print. I love that we say read the fine print, and then how many of us really do, right? Let's be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Absolutely crucial that you read the fine print and understand what it is you are purchasing. As a professional in this field, Vicky, what would you say? What are the top three questions that somebody absolutely should ask their prospective agent?
You know what I would say, first of all, if it's a good enough agent, they're going to walk you through this themselves. There are four, and I don't know if you all have paper, a pen, but there are 4 points that I want you to write down. It's who, what, where, how. Those are things that I want you to be able to walk into talking to an agent about. And this starts with you and your family, not with the agent, right? So, who? Who will take care of you in the event of a long-term care need? Who is that? Right? And what I always love to say and think is, does your who know that they're your who, right? Because that's a discussion that needs, you might be planning that my cousin, my first cousin, is going to take care of me, or my granddaughter, or whatever. Well, does granddaughter know that? You should have that discussion. So who will take on the responsibility of taking care of you? The next W is what? What kind of care do you think you need or will want? Right? What kind of care? Skilled nursing? Do you want to be in a place? You want to be at home? What kind of care? And that goes into the where. Where do you want to be? Taken care of at home or nursing home? And lastly, which is the big one, how are you going to pay for it? Right? That's the strategy that you'll be guided through, right? You and those things come before you start even seriously thinking about what you're going to purchase, because then a good agent can help you determine that amount for you, right? And I do want to throw this in there too, Julia, because most people don't realize this. A lot of people think that Medicare will pay for long-term care. It does not. It does not. So that's the other reason for having your independent coverage and policy. I hope I answered the question that you asked.
You did, and I just want to reiterate that so many people still have a sense of thinking that Medicare covers that type of service, and it does not. And I may be overstepping my boundaries here, but one of the things that when I first started caring for my mom, I was one of those folks who read through the Medicare and You handbook because I thought
Mm,
I need to know what I need to know. And I was really confused at the beginning because it would say home health. And I
mm,
thought, well, there it is. It says home health.
mm,
That is not having somebody come in and help you with those ADLs in your home. The home health may be somebody who is sent by your doctor's office or a therapist to help you with your occupational therapy or your physical therapy. That's not the kind of help where you say, well, I need to have somebody here to help me with breakfast and to help me with my showering and help me get dressed. Two
mhm.
different things. So don't let that terminology can be very tricky. And a lot of it, again, is acronyms. If there's an
Yes.
acronym and you're not familiar with it, do the next level of research so that you
Yes.
understand what all of these terms mean.
Mm,
This insurance, it's out of your pocket, right? We are
yes.
paying for that ourselves. And years later now, I am so thankful to my HR person because I know from my perspective, uh, did the policy I had purchased from my mother cover everything? No, there
Mhm.
was a several $1,000s a month gap between what was going out and what was reimbursed through my policy. But it allowed me to be able to keep working because I was able to have that care for her. So really think about your own family's budget. And even if it's a supplemental amount
Yes,
that can give you a space for care, think about that, research it, um, because it could be just the difference between not having any type of help and having just a little bit.
yes.
Um,
So those key
so is
questions
there,
being, what does it actually cover, right? What does it cover? What does that mean? Like you just said, Julie, you say home health. Well, what exactly does that mean? When
yeah,
does it kick in? When does the benefit kick in? Because typically it is 90 days before any benefit is paid. What does that mean? That means that you have to be able to handle 3 months of cost on your own. And it's different from doing it at home, of course, and then doing it in a nursing home. So exactly when does that kick in? When I say what does it cover, does it also cover what we would say respite time? Let's say you are being taken care of at home and a family member is taking care of you. By the way, some of those policies will actually pay your family member to take care of you and will train them to be able to do that, right? Caregiving, as Julia will attest to, I'm sure, can be very draining emotionally, physically, everything on the caregiver. So sometimes what needs to happen, that caregiver needs a break. Does your policy allow for you, for the caregiver, to take a weekend off or go someplace, right? And cover the time that mom or dad will be taken care of. Are there increases that will come at some point? And if so, how and when, right? And how long does the coverage last? All of that is stuff that you would work through with an agent, but those are top of mind questions.
yeah. And I think one of the key elements is that this definitely falls into the category of you don't know what you don't know
Oh, God, yes.
until it's in front of you. So any questions you have, and I think we're at a time now where we can dive into the questions here,
Okay.
but start jotting down your questions that you would have for an agent that you reach out to or a professional. No question is silly. Anything and everything that you can possibly think of, make a list and write down that question because those are the items that could possibly trip you up if you don't ask.
Very true.
So I know we had quite a few questions coming in, and Bruce and Christina, should I look through them or can one of you pop up, or should I just go back to the top of the list and scroll down?
I've been taking notes. I can read them down the line.
Okay.
And thank you everyone for staying on and for dropping some of your questions. Just a bit of a disclaimer: we can't do financial or legal advice or recommending things, and we don't know what your specific policy is. So we might be able to answer generally, but if you do have a policy and you have questions, that would have to be addressed with the company that you have a policy through. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start at the top, and we'll just kind of go down the line. First question, I think Courtney has a question here from the top of the line. Even if you pass the cognitive test, and we start talking about earlier, she said I assume that at 80 years old, it's far more expensive than at 60. Is that correct? Oh, hi,
Absolutely.
Courtney. Courtney's right there. Hi, Courtney.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, if you're even able to get the coverage, of course, at that time, um, everything goes up with age. So, in terms of even getting that coverage, under 50, 80% of us of those policies are done. When you get 70, 79 and above, only 50%, 56% of those are approved, right? Just like insurance, as the age goes up, because the cost of insuring you is more expensive. So yes, ma'am.
And Courtney, I'm going to keep on you because you had another question here. You said your husband's 90. He has had a long-term care policy for 20 years. You're 80 with no long-term care insurance. You're paying $300 a month when he got it. He's now 90 and you're paying $1,020 a month. You are tempted to discontinue it, but you don't really know the ramifications of doing that. It's a big decision, and we hear that a lot.
That's huge. I don't know what company that is, but I would start with getting in the ear of an agent to fully explain to me what is the value of keeping it at $1,000, jumping from 300 to 1,000. The question at that point becomes, is it better to put it in a vehicle where that money grows so that I can take care of that my loved one, or continuing to put that $1,000 a month into a policy? Does that make sense? So yeah, I'd spend some time with that agent to make sure of, like, what's the length that's left, will it pay, and how many at 1,000. That's a big jump.
Thank you, Courtney.
That's an existing policy, right? That's not even trying to start out there. So think about that. That's if you started out, well, it would be very hard, I think, at this point to get one at 90, right? But $1,000, that's a big one.
That's quite a bit. I have a question here from Jean. Jean said, is there any benefit to both spouses getting insurance from the same provider, like a better rate for car insurance when multiple cars are insured together?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Depending, again, who you're working with, there should be a discount based on the fact that you're doing it together. And from my experience, I can tell you that typically if you even apply together and one doesn't get it, and that happens, right? One gets approved and the other doesn't, the discount still stays in place. So absolutely.
Thank you.
Do it together.
Another one actually from Jean. Are agents independent, or do they usually work for a company and their policies?
Actually don't know of any independent agents that are doing that. One, because like I said, long-term care is not being offered by everyone the way it was before. So there's specific companies, like, even my company, it's life insurance, but it has the whole umbrella of everything else. So you want a company, right, that is financially stable. That's first and foremost. You want to be sure that at the time you go on claim, that they can actually pay it, right? So you look at those things when you're looking at the company, but typically it's not independent. And if there is an independent agent out there, they are probably appointed with a company to be able to do that.
And if I can just add something to that, and it may be different for each state.
Yes.
Another secondary layer of testing things, and Vicki can attest that I did this when I was shopping and educating, is check with your state's insurance commissioner's office. Quite often they will have a listing of companies that they have vetted, that they, and they can't tell you who to go work with, but they then will have a rating that will say these 3 companies are ones that we, can at least vouch for, that they have those higher ratings, that they are financially stable, and they won't just vanish when you need help.
That's a great first start.
Yeah, and good plug, actually, Julia. My lovely colleague Bruce behind the scenes is dropping in some resources in the chat, and the Washington State Office of the Insurance Commissioner does have a guide to, not only do they have a guide that goes through kind of long-term care, a little bit about what it is, what it means. They even have a workbook, and they have an Ask an Expert
Nice.
online question
Nice.
form that you can send in.
Nice.
And I will say, I know that the long-term care insurance is one way to, address your needs as you get older. I will be one of those solo agers, so it's going to be interesting. I also want to point out that there are some free resources available to family caregivers to assist in the long-term care journey. Here in the state of Washington, we have the Washington Area Agencies on Aging, which provide resources through all 39 counties. They do offer things like support groups. They have some training for family caregivers if you need to, if you need to give injections or you're talking about transferring. And they have trained experts that you can call on the phone through a toll-free number. I'll try and pop that in here, or through an online, and they'll ask you some questions about your situation, and they can help connect you to resources within your county. And often they can connect you to resources that you didn't even know you qualified for. And so I did drop, it's called Community Living Connections, WACLC.org. I dropped that into the chat. We'll also send all of this in a recap message. Questions. Let's see.
I know we may be hopping around, but there was one question in here that if I can address, it caught my eye because I felt like it, let's see, it was to the effect of, oh yes, Patrick, how are we supposed to know what we need if we're buying coverage at 60 that we won't need until we're 80? And who knows what life will do to us in the meantime, right? It's like this whole gambling thing that we have to go through. From personal experience of having been a caregiver and watched the transition over the years of my mom, and knowing that all of us is aging, right? We don't know for certain. My approach, and I know this isn't professional, it's a lived experience approach of start from your worst case scenario and work backwards, right? And then if nothing ever happens, you're golden. And if you've talked with an agent and you have a policy that's built in a way that says, well, I don't need it, and now I've got this other life benefit that's for myself or another family member, you're great. But what if something happens at age 68 and it's some rare disease, or none of us know, right? None of us know what's going to happen when we get up in the morning and when we step outside. We have absolutely no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you have taken an approach of, well, if this happens, who's going to be there to help me? Then you know you've worked backwards. So that's just some input that we don't know.
Yeah.
But what we do know is the cost that it takes to have somebody in your home 24/7. We know the cost of facility care 24/7. We know the difference between the cost of skilled nursing facility and assisted living. And we know the resources and the reports and the history of what that may look like and mean if you have no other resources to be your advocate. So those things we do know,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And some of it isn't pretty.
Yeah.
Therefore, we can work backwards with the things that maybe we can try to mitigate to protect ourselves. So that would be my input to that.
Julia, I would come behind you and say, and I truly mean this, something is better than nothing. We can't figure out what it's going to be like down the line, right? But having a policy within your budget gives you at least some coverage, right? To be able to deal with it. That's one thing. The other thing I want you all to think about, you don't have to be old to need a long-term care policy. You understand? A very young person can get in an accident. Anything can happen that will cause someone to need to not be able to do 3 of those 6 daily activities. And that is when long-term care coverage kicks in. So it's not based on your age as to when you are able to use a benefit, it's when you need it.
Yeah, that is such a, I was gonna, Vicki, you were reading my mind. I was gonna say, we've worked, AARP works on a lot of legislation and a lot of policy, and something like 40% of long-term care users are younger than you would expect. So that's really true. I want to get to a question. I have a question here from Cheryl. What are some of the reasons that you might be denied coverage? And I'm going to augment that a little bit. Not only denied coverage, but sometimes they just don't deny you outright. They'll just like, well, you just have to pay a whole bunch more. If you have some pre-existing conditions. But Vicki, are there any kind of common red flags that insurance companies might not have in?
That's probably the one cheat sheet I didn't pull up, but yes, there are some things, and I'll tell you, if anxiety, mental health issues, certain kinds of diseases, those there are things that's an automatic decline, which is why what we do is start out with a pre questionnaire, right? Let's like run through those things and try to make sure you don't have them. Respiratory issues are one that I've seen too happen. But I for me, I think long-term care is a lot more straightforward than life insurance when it comes to oh well, we're not going to decline you outright, but since you smoke, we're going to charge you a little bit more. It's not that. I think it is either, and they're looking at how long you would be expected to live based upon what it is you have. I can share some of that with you later if you'd like me, if you want to send it out as well.
Yeah, that would
I can send that like a pre-application questionnaire type thing.
I'm looking, we've got 5 minutes left. These go by so fast. So fast, so fast.
Hey, Christina, can I do this? There's one thing I saw when I was talking and I saw it go by. And the question had to do with, why a policy versus self-insure, right? And I might have said it at the beginning, but I can honestly tell you that one catastrophic, long-term, extended care, anything can devastate. You can self-insure, but you need to make sure that you have the money that's going to last despite whatever it is that you come across, right? So when we say insurance, that's getting that little bucket, putting it off to the side, and knowing that it's there when you need it, and run that money out rather than the money that's in your bank account or investments.
That's great. I am going to pop one thing in here. One thing that is unique about Washington State, and I think we're going to do probably a full session on this one a little bit later this summer, is Washington State is the first state in the nation that actually has a public long-term care insurance policy. So if you are a worker, you may notice that you get 0.58% of your check taken out of your check. For something that's called the WA Cares Fund, which actually launches this summer. That starts. It's a small amount of money, but it is something to help you kind of bridge that gap. Works very similar. 3 activities of daily living. I just popped a link into the chat. Probably sometime I think in August, once the program is kind of up and running, we'll bring some folks from the WA Cares Fund in to talk through what that program is, because most Washington workers right now actually have a very, very tiny long-term care policy available. But it's a little something that that can help. I'm going to
Washington State may be on the front end of it because other states are looking at doing the same thing.
Yeah,
So good
we're
time to
the
check it out.
experiment. We're the, people like, oh, we'll see what you guys are doing first before we do it.
Yeah.
And there are some other states that are now kind of exploring doing that, a similar option. Before I close out, I'm going to put up a resource screen. Particularly like if you want to learn more about our fantastic Julia, if I can find where my share thing is, our fantastic Julia and some of the stuff that she does through her, excuse me, Keep It Real Caregiving. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and so if any of you have any questions, I have a newsletter on Substack, Keeping It Real Caregiving. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. I can then pass those along. So don't hesitate to email me directly. Take it down and I can connect you and we can make sure that, you have some of those other questions answered.
And we'll
But
send this out as well. So this information will be included in a follow-up email to everyone attended today, and even everyone who registered and didn't attend. They're still going to
yes.
get information.
And a huge thank you to Vicki Fraser Williams. I cannot tell all of you enough. You've only met her in this last hour. I've known and worked with Vicki for more than 20 years. We both come from the broadcast news background. So when I say that we approach things in a very pragmatic way, but from the heart and also being family caregivers, some of this is because we've seen these stories, we've covered them, we've talked to the families. It's not theoretical for us. We've been in people's homes and covered all manner of news and situations. And so Vicki, thank you so much. I am
Thank you.
honored and blessed that I can call you a friend and that I know you're an expert in what you do. So thank
Amen.
you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
My heart out to all of you. Julia, I'm so lucky to have you as a partner and volunteer and helping with the caregiver. Vicki, thank you so much for joining us from across the nation and spending your afternoon and giving us some of your time. I really, really appreciate it.
You're
And
welcome.
to everyone who joined us today, thank you so much for choosing to spend an hour of your day today with AARP. We hope that this was helpful information, and we definitely will circle back with a recording of this presentation and then some of the resources that we've dropped in the line to help you all out in the journeys that you're all on. So from
So cool that
AARP,
Courtney
go
Ridge. Let me
Vicki.
just learn that Courtney Ridge. So cool that you stayed on camera the whole time. How cool is that?
Yeah, I think David was on too. Thank you so much, everyone. We really, really appreciate it. I wish you all the best of today and the days to come. Have a
Thank
wonderful one.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
Christina.
Bye, Vicki. Bye, Julia.